have it on sound. Mine can do not sound.
Ooh, okay.
I know, right? That's kind of nice for like, I don't know what for, but
Like if you were
if I didn't
going in
want
and
it
out
to,
of the room or something.
yeah, if I didn't want it to ding.
All right.
Okay, so for topics today, I picked 8 as a priority.
Okay.
So you may choose a number 1 through 8, and that will be our topic.
Hey, what am I feeling today? Today, feeling like a 6.
A 6. Okay. Oh, this is a good one. Making friends.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
As an autistic, clearly. But
Yeah.
that's like one of the primary questions I hear in my practice is like, how do I make friends? Or just like a recognition that they want more friends in their life. So maybe
Yeah.
I'll bat it to you first on advice you have on making friends as an autistic.
Yeah. What advice do I have? No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, when I get this question, I think about like what are the activities that you like to do and go do those activities and then make friends with other people doing those activities.
Yeah.
So for me, the most impactful place that I built community as an adult outside of like, college dorms where people are built in, even grad school in my apartment, everybody was grad students in that apartment building. And so there was just kind of like, you go next door and there's like classmates and there you go, you have friends.
Yeah.
So as an adult, detached from all of those kind of like handed to you friendship opportunities, the
Yeah.
main source of building community for me was going to spoken word open mics. And so
Hmm.
I'm always like, go to the open mics. That's where you're going to find artists. That's where you're going to find like people who think differently. It's where you're going to find people who like probably care a little bit more about like social justice sort of things. Um,
Hmm.
and I say it kind of jokingly, but also like it's also a great place to find more queer community. It's
Yeah.
there's just kind of, at least in my experience now, this was in Los Angeles when I was living there. That was like where I found people that I connected with. And there's something about spoken word that like you get to know a vibe of a person without having to talk to them face to face. Like you kind of get a vibe
Hmm.
about who someone is,
Yeah.
like from their spoken word, what they're talking about, how they're talking about it. And it's a place that like for me as an introvert, I could just like go by myself, be there, and I can sign up and participate, but I also didn't have to like there was an unstructured milling about socializing time, which
Hmm.
is like the
Important.
biggest stressor for me in social settings. How about you?
Okay. I'm gonna keep throwing hard questions at you. I'm not ready to. So what if someone was like, okay, that's cool, Jen, but I don't have any activities I like to do outside of the house.
Yeah. So then I would ask, like, well, what are those activities? Are those activities like sometimes people play video games, and some of those video games are games that you can play with other people. And so sometimes that's where you find friends. Like, oh, yeah, I have, you know, whatever, like my random nerd ass, like, yeah, my friend Tomb Raider 33 is like, we always play this game every Thursday. I'm like, well, that's a friend. That, I
Hmm.
think part of neurodivergence is um, expanding the notion of friendship, where so many of us have deeply meaningful and fulfilling and intimate and connected friendships and relationships with people we've never met. Exhibit
Yeah, like you and
B.
I have never met in person. Yeah.
Yeah, and you are as much a real and important friends in my life as anybody else, that you like, this friendship is no less significant because it has solely been like virtual.
Yeah. And that makes me think about another thing I discuss with clients is that you don't need every friend to be everything.
Yeah.
Like, I call you my business bestie. Like, anytime there's anything related to my business, I'm like, this happened. And like, whereas like, I'm not going to my other friends with that kind of stuff usually. Like, I tend to reserve it for you. And yeah, I guess that's just my point, is that you don't need one friend to be everything you need.
And that, I think that's important to embrace too. Like, even, I mean, that's an important aspect of romantic relationships too. Like, a romantic partner is not going to be all of everything, right? And so, especially for autistic and ADHD folks who we have a bunch of different special interests. So I have my like printmaker relief carving friends who I talk about that stuff with, and I do classes with them. And, that's like one little mini world that I'm a part of. And then I have like business bestie and other like business adjacent people that I talk to about entrepreneurship. And it is okay to have different friend groups that kind of go with our different special interests. And, maybe there are people who kind of bridge some of those gaps, or are not necessarily interest specific friends, but are just kind of like, this is a kindred person in my life.
Yeah. And that, I think one thing that's changed for me since learning I'm autistic with friendships is, well, for one, I've never had a lot of friendships. Just like, let's put that out there. I've always wanted more friendships though. And I think I have wasted a lot of time trying to make friendships work that we weren't aligned. And I'm saying this before I knew I was autistic, not saying I have to have autistic friends, but what I'm saying is once I learned I was autistic, I was much more like, what are my needs? Who am I? I was embracing who I am more. And like, now when I meet people, if like we don't align on certain values, or if like they're very judgmental of me not wanting to go out and socialize at different times, like I'm just like, God, this is not a friend I want to waste my energy with.
Yeah.
Or not a friend, like a person. They're not even a friend yet. And so I'm way more discriminatory now. And like, I think that has served me. Like, for instance, like my friendship with you, like, this is a friendship I want to cultivate and put energy into. And like, if I was busy trying to make all these other friendships work, I wouldn't have as much time for like the ones I value.
Yeah. I think it's healthy, right? That's like we are limited. I know some extroverts, and even they are limited with their social energy. And, I think that is part of like, as we mature socially, we do pick and choose, like, who is allowed in my inner circle, who is allowed to have, certain levels of access to me. I think one of the things that has become really clear in the last few years, and even more so since I came into my autistic identity, is that there are a lot of people who have been fans of me, but not necessarily my friend. So they like my energy, or they like the programs that I'm providing to the community. They like what I have to offer. But for a long time, I was like, oh, this is friendship. And then like the reciprocity piece wasn't always there. And that's something that has been an essential piece of like relationship learning for me, especially in the last couple of years, is friendship is an exchange. It doesn't mean one to one. Like sometimes one person leans on the other more heavily
Yeah.
depending on the season, but
Yeah.
that there is an exchange, that there is, you know, a
Maybe
back and
like
forth.
the awareness too of that, like that they're
Right.
aware of the exchange and like you're both aware that like, oh, it might be a little off kilter now, but it'll go back. Like that at least you even noticed.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think, yeah, for a long time I was connected with people who like maybe just weren't thinking about that. Or I was interpreting something as friendship that was not supposed to be interpreted as friendship, or like maybe I put them in the friend circle when actually they're just a bunch of acquaintances. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of my challenges, because like I'm real and authentic and I want to have deep, like juicy conversations with people. And
Hmm.
I do that with whomever I'm interacting with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Exactly.
so I think that's where like then I get confused, because I'm like, oh well, like I had a real interaction with them, so we must be friends. Versus that was maybe a one-time real interaction that was authentic, but also it's not something that both parties are like committed to sustaining and like
Hmm.
engaging actively in.
Right. Because like also other people have different levels of responsibilities in their life or things going
Mhm.
on that they may not be able to, show up as the kind of friend you're wanting, which I was thinking about when we were talking about different kinds of friends. Like it might be a helpful exercise, like if you don't have enough if you feel you don't have enough friends, to be like, well, what kinds of things would I like to be able to do with a friend? Like, for
Mm.
instance, I want someone to call when I'm upset, or I want someone to go to a movie with me when I want to go. I never want to go, but other people might. Um, just things like that,
Yeah.
and that might give you a better idea of like for instance, if it's like I want someone to go roller skating with me, let's say, then maybe might want to go to a roller skating club, or like that
Mhm.
can kind of help you figure out where to look for friends. And like, because like I had mentioned that kind of hard question of like, well, what if I don't leave the house? Well, then I'm guessing you
Yeah.
probably don't want a friend to leave the house with. Like you're
Right. Yes.
enjoying your house. So you might be better fitted to a virtual friend or someone you just, talk to on the phone. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like there are some plant parents who want to stay in their house with their plants, right? But it's like plant people love talking about their plants. And like, let me show you a picture. And this is like
mm,
from a little cutting, and now look how big they are, right? Like that's something that people love sharing with someone else who's like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful plant. And I mean that with like all sincerity,
yeah,
right? I'm like that
yeah.
with my dog and with other people's dogs. And something else that I was thinking about, so I'm kind of changing, not subjects, but points. I think one of the other key pieces for me in the friendships, like the friendships that I look back at that have lasted 10 years or more in my life, there's like it's a small handful. Like it's
Yeah.
not this mass
Yeah.
of people. But one of the key pieces of those friendships are that I like we can go periods of time without interacting with each other. And there is
Yes.
always like still an assumption of we are connected and we are friends. And
Yeah.
that is huge for me, because there are times where I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I love you and
Mm-hmm.
I am here supporting you
Yeah.
in your life. I cheer you on. I like your photos and I am like sincerely engaged in that. And also I don't want to talk. And to
Mm-hmm.
have friends who get that and don't don't put out any kind of energy that then I interpret as like, oh, I'm such a bad friend, I feel
Yeah, or
ashamed.
they're like, what's happening? You're not talking to me. What's wrong? Did I do something? Like,
Right.
similar to you, I have friends like this where it's just like, hey, it's been a while. What's up? Like, it's not a big
Mhm.
deal.
And it is such a, it's so freeing to be in that kind of friendship where I know, like, we don't have to bother with apologies for the first 10 minutes of every phone call. Like, we know
Yeah.
our lives are busy. We have stuff going on. We also know that we love each other. And when we are able to catch up, we do.
Hmm.
And like, that connection and kinship does not diminish over time, like, just because we may not be actively talking to one another. And I think a lot of neurodivergent folks experience that, like,
Hmm. I want
feeling
to,
what?
no, finish.
Oh,
I'm
just
holding.
like feeling bad in friendships because, like, oh my gosh, like, I can't keep up with the amount of texting or checking in or following up
Yeah.
that others expect. And so I'm just a bad friend and I suck. So I probably shouldn't make friends anyway.
Hmm. What I was going to tack on was I think it also means from the beginning being very transparent about who you are. Like, I find it so
Mm-hmm.
helpful to be like, I am autistic in the beginning, and to really, like, when I get invited to things I don't want to go to, I just say like, hey, that's not my thing. Instead of
Mm-hmm.
like in the past, I would have been like, oh yeah, maybe I'll make it. And then the day of, like, sorry, can't. Like, I didn't handle it in a good way. And now
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like straightforward as fuck. And like it goes so much better. And like, yeah, sometimes people are like, ooh, this does not work for me. And we don't stay friends. And sometimes like it does work. And those are the friends that last.
Right. Exactly. Because that's, these are things about boundaries. And, I think from this point forward, kind of how you and I began in friendship, we were both open about our autism. And so that was like, oh, cool. Okay. Like, we can just start from there. Friends that
Yeah.
I've had for longer, um, if that friendship has evolved and the needs and the boundaries have evolved. But thankfully, like, the ones who are still in my life are ones who are like, okay, yeah, so we'll work around it. That's fine.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that's precious. Um, I also think one other thought about friendships, or another thought about friendships, is like, we there are relationships that are valuable and real and authentic and are just for a season. Not every friendship is
So
meant to
true.
be
Forever.
across all of life. And that is something that
Yeah.
I've had to recognize. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay for a friendship to come to a close at the end of a certain season. It doesn't mean that that was a failed friendship necessarily, or anyone did anything wrong. It just means, like, that season is over. Some
Yeah.
friendships will sustain through other seasons. But I think that's another
Good
piece
point.
of it that can be like a tender piece for autistic
Mm.
ADHD folks, especially around that, like, rejection sensitive dysphoria piece.
I smile because I don't know that everyone knows what that means.
Oh, yeah. So rejection sensitive dysphoria is something that, well, I'll be transparent. I don't know tons about it. I am still learning about it. I think it occurs in a higher rate amongst neurodivergent folks. And that's just about, like, an extra sensitivity to the experience of feeling rejected. And so, again, that can come up with, like, oh, they didn't text me back for like 5 days. They hate me
Mm.
forever.
Yeah,
Um,
or like, what are they going to think of me if I say I don't want to go, or if I like leave early, or yeah.
right. And I think this is one of those things that is like this tricky, like, there are definitely trauma elements that result in, I still have a minute over
What
here.
the hell? I'm so sorry. Oh, is that mine? Oh, that's
I don't
mine.
know.
Was that yours?
No,
But I totally cut you off in the middle of your sentence. I'm
that's
sorry.
okay. Oh, now it. No. Okay, but we're gonna finish
But
the
you still
thought
get to
if I can
finish.
get it back.
I know, right? That's what I was like, oh.
Oh, the trauma piece. Like folks who have experienced long-term ongoing complex trauma, especially from like closest people in life who are supposed to love you and then didn't, right? Like
Mm,
that is the big like attachment wound thing. Like rejection is connected to that. So, you know, there are pieces, it's like what we talked about in one of the other episodes, like with your sticky notes, like there's so many layers of like,
yeah.
and I don't know that we can tease out completely like this part is autistic, this part is trauma, this part is ADHD. It's like
Yeah.
we have all these things. They're things to be aware of. Um, and especially if we're talking about building friendships that like we have that sensitivity that can be a whole other obstacle. But, yeah, I think that's we could talk more
Okay.
about it some other time.
On that note,
And cut.
we'll cut.